Good morning, and before I say anything else, let me tell you something that might genuinely stop you in your tracks. For most of your life, you've been handed a quiet script about aging. It goes something like this. After a certain point, you're supposed to fade gracefully into the background. You're supposed to do less, want less, expect less. You're supposed to accept that decline is simply the price of having lived a long time. But what if that script is not only wrong? What if it's one of the most damaging ideas ever whispered into the ear of an older adult? I'm Dr. Henry Morgan, and in more than 2 decades of working closely with patients between the ages of 75 and 85, I have watched something unfold over and over again that the research is only now catching up to. The people who age the most remarkably, the ones who still walk into my office under their own power, who still tell jokes that make me laugh out loud, who still recall the names of every great-grandchild without hesitation. They are not the ones with the best genetics or the most money or the rarest supplements. They are the ones who, often without realizing it, still do a specific handful of things that the vast majority of people their age have quietly let slip away. And here is the part that should give you a quiet jolt of hope. According to a long-term analysis drawn from the Stanford Center on Longevity, which tracked more than 4,000 adults between the ages of 70 and 90 for over a decade, those who maintained a small cluster of these specific behaviors were dramatically more likely to retain what researchers call full functional independence deep into their 80s. We're talking about the difference between living your life on your own terms and living it according to someone else's timetable. That is not a small thing. That is everything. Now, I want to be honest with you right from the start because I respect you too much to do otherwise. The number one habit on this list, the rarest and most powerful of all six, is something almost no one over 75 still practices consistently. Researchers at Johns Hopkins have called it one of the most underused tools for protecting the aging mind, and yet it requires no prescription, no equipment, and not a single dollar. It has nothing to do with the things your doctor usually mentions. So please, stay with me all the way to the end, because that final habit alone could reshape how you spend the years ahead of you. But before we begin counting down, I want to ask you something, and I mean this sincerely. Drop your age in the comments below. Whether you're 71, 76, 83, or anywhere in between, tell me which of these 6 habits you believe you already have. I read the comments on this channel. I read your stories, your worries, your small victories. This community means a great deal to me, and your voice belongs in this conversation. So leave it down there, and let's talk to each other like real people. Now, let's count down from number 6 to number 1, beginning with something so simple you'll be tempted to dismiss it. Please don't. Number 6. Drinking water with intention, not by accident. Here is what nearly everyone gets wrong about hydration after 75. They assume their body handles fluid the way it did at 50. It simply does not. As you age past 70, your kidneys lose a significant portion of their filtering efficiency. Your sense of thirst becomes noticeably blunted, which means you can be genuinely dehydrated and feel absolutely no signal telling you to drink. And your blood, which is the delivery system carrying oxygen and nutrients to your muscles and your brain, becomes measurably less effective with each percentage point of fluid you lose. Picture your bloodstream as a river that carries supplies to every corner of a vast city. When that river runs low, the deliveries slow down, shipments get lost, and slowly the whole city begins to struggle. That is precisely what chronic mild dehydration does to an older body. It rarely announces itself with drama. Instead, it shows up as afternoon fog, as a moment of dizziness when you stand, as a balance that feels a half-second slower than it used to. The seniors who do this exceptionally well don't simply sip water when they happen to think of it. They drink a full glass first thing in the morning, before coffee, before breakfast, before anything else. This matters because your body loses fluid overnight through breathing and quiet perspiration, and after 75, that overnight deficit is considerably larger than it was in midlife. Then they take a small glass with each meal, and one more in the mid-afternoon when energy naturally dips. Here is the synergy tip that separates the exceptional from the ordinary. Pair your morning water with a small amount of high-quality sea salt or a proper electrolyte tablet. After 75, your kidneys struggle to hold on to sodium, and without it, plain water can pass straight through your system without being properly absorbed into the cells where it's actually needed. A little mineral support makes every glass count. I had a patient, Margaret, 81 years old, who came to me describing what she called a feeling of her thinking being wrapped in cotton. She wasn't dehydrated in any obvious or alarming way. She was chronically, quietly underhydrated. We changed one thing. Strategic, well-timed hydration with a pinch of mineral support in the morning. A few weeks later, she told me it felt as though someone had cleaned the windows of her mind. One habit, a genuinely different quality of life. Number 5, resistance-based movement at least twice a week. Let me be very clear about what I mean because this is misunderstood constantly. I am not talking about a gym or heavy barbells. I am talking about any movement that asks your muscles to push against a force, whether that's a stretchy resistance band, a light dumbbell, a wall push-up, or even carrying your groceries with deliberate intention. This matters enormously after 75 because of something called anabolic resistance. In plain language, it means your aging muscles have become harder to reach. They need a stronger, more intentional signal to maintain themselves than they did decades ago. Your muscles are not lazy. They are simply waiting for a louder knock at the door. And if that knock never comes, they begin to quietly waste away through a process called sarcopenia, the gradual loss of muscle and strength that researchers have linked to a sharply higher risk of falls and a steep drop in the ability to handle daily tasks within just a few years. But here is the encouraging side. The aging body responds to resistance training remarkably well, even late in life. Studies following adults in the 75 to 85 range who began twice-weekly resistance work have shown striking gains in leg strength and balance after only a couple of months. And here is the part that surprises everyone. That same training improves how your body handles blood sugar, which ripples outward into your energy, your inflammation levels, and even your thinking. You are not just building muscle, you are rebuilding the entire energy infrastructure of your body. The practical prescription is simple. 2 to 3 sessions a week, 20 to 30 minutes each, focusing on the large muscle groups in your legs, hips, and back. Resistance bands are ideal because they offer challenge without pounding your joints. The synergy tip. Try to eat a solid portion of protein within roughly half an hour of your session, because after 75, your window for muscle repair is shorter and far less forgiving. Timing is no longer optional at your age. It is part of the medicine. Number 4, keeping a consistent, purposeful sleep schedule. And before I continue, if this is giving you something of value, if you're hearing things you wish someone had told you years ago, please take 1 second and click that subscribe button. And if you know someone between 70 and 90 who deserves to hear this, share it with them today. This channel exists for one reason: to give you the science-backed truth that a rushed medical appointment rarely has time to cover. Now, back to sleep because this is far more layered than simply going to bed early. After 75, your internal 24-hour clock begins to drift and weaken. Your brain produces far less of the melatonin it once did, and your deepest, most physically restorative sleep shrinks dramatically compared to what you had in your 30s. That deep phase is when your body does its most important repair work on cells, immune function, and muscle. And here is what most people never realize. Poor sleep after 75 isn't only about feeling tired. Research has connected disrupted sleep in older adults to a greater buildup of the very brain plaques associated with memory disease. Sleep is not rest in the lazy sense. Sleep is when your brain cleans house. The seniors who do this beautifully don't just sleep more. They sleep consistently. They go to bed within the same half-hour window every night and wake at the same time every morning, weekends included. They keep their bedroom cool because temperature regulation falters with age, and a cooler room supports the deep sleep your brain is craving. And they step away from screens for about an hour before bed, not only because of the light, but because mental stimulation keeps the thinking part of the brain switched on long after you've turned out the light. The synergy tip. Pair your steady sleep schedule with about 10 minutes of slow, deep belly breathing before bed. This gently flips your nervous system into its rest and repair mode and lowers the stress hormones that so often keep older adults hovering at the surface of sleep instead of sinking into its depths. Number 3, eating protein in a deliberate spread-out pattern. This is where I see the most dangerous misunderstanding among older adults, and as a physician, it genuinely worries me. There's an old idea that you need less protein as you age. That idea is not just wrong. It may be one of the most harmful pieces of nutritional folklore ever passed down through the generations. The truth is the opposite. Because of that anabolic resistance I mentioned, your body after 75 actually needs more protein per pound of body weight than a healthy younger adult does, just to hold on to the same muscle. Yet so many of the patients I see are eating roughly half the protein they truly need, often because appetite fades with age and softer, starchier foods feel easier to prepare and swallow. Research involving thousands of adults in their 70s and 80s has shown that those who ate adequate protein, spread across 3 or more meals, held on to significantly more muscle and were far less likely to end up hospitalized after a fall. Think of protein as the bricks your body uses to rebuild itself each night while you sleep. Every night, your body quietly tears down worn, damaged tissue and replaces it with new. Without enough bricks, that reconstruction is left half-finished. And over months and years, those small nightly shortfalls add up to something serious. The practical approach. Aim for a solid serving of protein at each of your 3 main meals, roughly the size of your palm, whether that's fish, eggs, poultry, Greek yogurt, or legumes. The reason spreading it out matters so much is that aging muscle can only use a limited amount of protein at a single sitting. Beyond that, the extra is simply burned for energy rather than used for repair. Distribution is what makes every gram earn its keep. I think of James, 78, who came to me after his daughter noticed he'd lost a worrying amount of weight that his previous doctor had waved off as normal. It was not normal. He was losing muscle, not fat, and his grip strength, which is a powerful predictor of how long and how well a person lives, had fallen into a concerning range. We rebuilt his meals around deliberate, distributed protein. A few months later, he had regained a meaningful amount of lean strength, and he told me, with real pride in his voice, that he had carried all of his own groceries in from the car for the first time in 2 years. The synergy tip. Pair your protein with a little vitamin C, an orange, some bell pepper, a squeeze of lemon, because vitamin C supports the connective tissue, joints, and skin that hold your whole frame together. Number 2, daily intentional social engagement. I told you earlier that one of the top 2 habits would surprise you. This is the one that catches most people off guard because it sounds too soft, too emotional, to belong on a doctor's list. But I want to be absolutely clear with you. The science on connection and longevity in adults over 75 is not soft. It is some of the hardest, most consistently repeated evidence in the entire field of aging. Large-scale research has found that chronic social isolation carries a risk to your lifespan comparable to smoking a significant number of cigarettes every single day. Let that settle for a moment. Loneliness is not merely a sad feeling. For an older body, it is a measurable physical danger, accelerating decline of the mind and raising the inflammatory markers in your blood that quietly wear down your heart, your immune defenses, and the connections inside your brain. Here's why it works so deeply. Genuine human interaction, not the television playing in the background, not sitting silently in the same room as someone, but real, engaged connection, triggers the release of bonding chemistry that lowers stress hormones, calms inflammation, and lights up the thinking centers of your brain. Picture your social brain as a muscle. The neurons that fire during real conversation, shared laughter, friendly disagreement, and heartfelt connection are the very same neurons that protect your memory and your sense of who you are. When they fall silent for weeks at a time, they begin to wither. The prescription is not complicated, but it must be intentional. Aim for at least one meaningful, in-person connection every single day. A truly engaged phone call counts. A community group, a faith gathering, a walking partner, a standing lunch with a neighbor. What does not count is passive presence. You must be actively thinking, responding, laughing, disagreeing. That engagement is the stimulus. Dorothy, 83, lost her husband of more than 5 decades and withdrew almost entirely from the world. Within a year, her thinking had measurably slipped. We didn't change a single medication. We built her a social schedule, a weekly book club, a daily phone call rotating through friends and family, and a volunteer shift at her local library. Months later, her daughter told me she seemed like herself again. Connection is not a luxury at this age. It is a biological necessity. The synergy tip. Combine your social time with gentle movement whenever you can. A walk with a friend, gardening alongside a neighbor. Because pairing connection with activity nourishes your brain even more powerfully than either one alone. And now, number 1. The habit that fewer than a small fraction of adults over 75 maintain consistently, and which researchers have called one of the most underused longevity tools available without a prescription. Number 1. A daily purposeful cognitive challenge. And I don't mean crosswords. I don't mean passive reading. Both have value, but I am talking about something more demanding and more transformative. The daily practice of learning something genuinely new. A skill, a language, a musical instrument, a fresh form of creative expression that forces your brain into a state of productive discomfort. Here is why this sits at the very top. After 75, your brain begins to lean heavily on its established, familiar pathways. It becomes wonderfully efficient at doing what it already knows and increasingly reluctant to build anything new. This is not a flaw in your character. It is an aging brain conserving energy by sticking to the well-worn roads. But that very preference for the familiar is how your cognitive reserve quietly drains away. Cognitive reserve is your brain's resilience buffer, its ability to absorb age-related changes and still function beautifully. Think of it as the spare capacity that lets your mind keep working smoothly, even as the underlying machinery ages. Long-term research following adults from their 70s into their late 80s has found that those who regularly engaged in novel, challenging mental activity showed slower shrinkage of the brain on scans and were notably less likely to receive a memory-related diagnosis in the years that followed. Other work has found that seniors who described their daily lives as genuinely intellectually engaging had brain function resembling that of people years younger. The mechanism is neuroplasticity, your brain's lifelong ability to reorganize itself by forming new connections. Yes, it slows with age, but it never fully disappears. Your brain retains the capacity for real structural change well into your 80s, but only if you give it sufficient stimulus. Novel learning is that stimulus. Learning a new language engages multiple regions of the brain at once. Learning an instrument weaves together fine motor control, listening, memory, and emotion in a way nothing else quite replicates. Even learning to cook an unfamiliar cuisine, with its reading, sequencing, and sensory attention, gives the brain a real workout. The practical approach. Choose one genuinely new skill every few months and spend 20 to 30 minutes a day actively learning it. The key word is actively. Watching someone play guitar on a screen is not learning guitar. Sitting with the instrument in your hands and fumbling through a chord progression is. That struggle, that productive discomfort, is exactly where the benefit lives. It is the mental equivalent of resistance training. The resistance is the point. Robert, 79, retired from a long engineering career and spent his first few years of retirement doing very little that truly stretched his mind. He came to me noticing trouble recalling names and following complex conversations. His scans showed nothing alarming, only the ordinary changes of age, but his reserve was thinner than I would have liked. I gave him one prescription: pick something he had always wanted to learn and do it every day. He chose oil painting, something he'd never once attempted. He was terrible at first, and he'll happily tell you so. A year and a half later, he had completed more than 20 paintings, joined a local art group, which quietly took care of habit number 2 as well, and his follow-up assessments showed genuine improvement, not just preservation. Improvement at 79. The synergy tip. Pair your daily mental challenge with omega-3 fats, found in fish like salmon, mackerel, and sardines, or a quality fish oil. These fats are the structural building blocks of your brain cells, and research suggests they help your brain absorb the benefit of everything you're working to learn. They are the fertilizer beneath the seed. Now let me close with something I say from the heart. Because I have sat across from enough people in this stage of life to know that these years are too often treated as a countdown rather than a continuation. They are not a countdown. The research I've shared with you today points to something medicine is only beginning to fully respect: that the body and mind at 75, at 80, at 85, hold on to a stubborn, remarkable capacity for resilience. Not in spite of age, but in conversation with it. These 6 habits, intentional hydration, resistance movement, consistent sleep, deliberate protein, daily connection, and purposeful learning, are not about turning back the clock. They are about making the most extraordinary possible use of the time the clock still has. They are about carrying your own groceries, remembering the names that matter, driving yourself to your own appointments, and laughing until your eyes water with someone you love. That is what independence looks like. That is what quality of life truly means. And I promise you, I have watched it happen with my own eyes in patients who'd been told there was nothing left to improve. It is never, ever too late to begin. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do it right now. Every week, I bring you research-backed, senior-specific health information that I genuinely believe can add years of quality to your life. Click subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss one. And now I want to hear from you. Leave your age in the comments and tell me which of these 6 habits you feel strongest in today, and which one you most want to build. I'll be reading every response. This community is one of the most thoughtful I've ever been part of, and that is entirely because of you. I'll see you in the next one. Take good care of yourself because you are absolutely worth the effort.